Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Yes, I'll come to the tie at the end. Let's face it, it's not the most important thing we have to talk about. However, accessing fan content is. And just to give it a little bit of context for our amazing panel that we have, in China, the NHL launched a fan leaders program to get hardcore fans to become ambassadors. Now, that's not the only example. There are many. FIFA, for example, has a fan movement project, which has 1,000 fans across 80 countries. And the group acts as a bridge to the organization between the fans and the administrators. At the same time, the diversity of the experience and different fans in different parts of the world is phenomenal. You know, if you're in Japan, fans are generally not happy to be part of the content. But if you're in India, they really are. If you're in Thailand, fans actually quite often prefer the commentary of other fans instead of the broadcasters. In some cases, it's been taken into a broadcast feed as an alternative. And if you're in Vietnam, fans, particularly around football, are widely responsible for a lot of the comment and opinion that's generated. Now, the key to all these things is, of course, the authenticity, the passion, the knowledge. The authenticity is what makes the difference. But the question is, should you be able to take that authenticity and balance the culture with the commercial realities that we all face in football? Well, we've got a great panel, and we're going to start with a club. We have, of course, a technology supplier in Microsoft, the technology supplier, and we've got two guys from the platforms. We've got Ronan and Theo to come to as well. But let me start with the clubs, if I may. So, Andy, you've been doing some very fan-focused work, even just across this incredible and bizarre summer that we've had.
Thanks for being on the panel. Thanks very much, and welcome everybody. Yeah, it's of course challenging time, no doubt, for everybody, really everybody, and probably sports organizations, of course, being on kind of less focused setup in comparison to more important industries like hospitals, like doctors in general. So we know our role, but ultimately, of course, we know our role also in a certain way that we know that sport clubs like ours, yeah, is in the heart of many fans worldwide. And so we knew, and we still know, that we can do a lot to make yeah, people's feelings, at least for some minutes per day, maybe some hours per day, come away from yeah, sometimes really bad negative topics in the Corona setup or in general. So, and in our club, we knew that we need to do more. Our club media department, which is doing a lot anyways, of course, all year long, including activating our social media channels, our fan channels, and our physical activations, which is more in my department's task. And we joined forces, and we yeah, came up with our digital summer tour, as we called it. Normally we travel, as the big clubs normally do, once a year, either to Asia or to the Americas. We always switching in the yearly rhythm between China and the US. These two countries are, in general, our two most the countries that we put the most focus on, and we couldn't travel, obviously, and still we wanted to, yeah, we wanted to interact with our fans. And in our club, we don't call the fans, they're more part of the family, and we call ourselves the world's biggest sports family, because by figures, we are a club based on memberships, almost 300,000, which is by far number one. We are a club where you can also be part of an organized fan club. We have more than 4,500 of these, which makes us number one as well. And that makes us come to the conclusion we are the world's biggest sports family. Many players, existing players, but also former players, yeah, claim that our club kind of has a family feeling, and we wanted to transport that also in this really very difficult time. And with this digital summer tour, obviously the personal contact that is part of these tours couldn't happen. But with more than 50 content pieces, with a lot of live stream interactions distributed globally on the one hand, but also specifically to certain countries on the other, made it a 9-day end of July time frame, where we, together with our partner Audi, that we always do the tours with, yeah, didn't really know what will happen. Will it be a success? How will the fans react? Do they see it as a nice try, all right, or will they really come up with feedback? qualitative, but also quantitative in terms of impressions, interactions, viewerships. And yeah, the success was overwhelming, both qualitative but also quantitative. And yeah, with fan surprise calls to Thailand. Richard, you mentioned several specifics in certain countries, how they want to be activated or really part of topics, or be more in the viewer role. But our club media colleagues, they know that perfectly. So I think we found the right balance to yeah, to transport what we want to transport. And no, we're really happy that we tried it, and it was a big success for us. Absolutely.
So I know you guys crunch numbers on absolutely everything. Can you give us some sense of the, I don't know, percentage growth or something like that? And in particular, I'm thinking, well, you know, there's a lot of clubs who are not as big as Bayern. You would say there are no clubs as big as Bayern. But within that context, do you feel that this kind of fan-focused interaction will work at smaller levels?
I definitely think so. Definitely think so. In the end, the figures might be less high, but it's always then, you know, in relation to your normal yeah, click rates, interaction rates, impressions. And for us, yeah, we had player interactions with fans, and these topics, they really were the most successful ones, and more successful than those where only players among themselves interacted. And I would assume very much that also smaller clubs, other clubs, could be successful in their target group. And I guess like AC Milan, they tried it for China. Dortmund did a similar thing for Southeast, or for Asia. There were clubs, maybe not on the global level, on that scale, how we did it, but in general, I think it's a successful opportunity to really yeah, to really deliver what you want to as a club in terms of value, but then also, of course, in terms of partner integration and sponsorship rights, which are key, obviously, for the rights holder, but also for those that are yeah, the partners, in this case Audi. And we had the most successful content piece, as an example. Out of these 50, it had over 70 million impressions, of course, then including Ronan and Theo's platforms, and dedicated China platforms. And for us as a club, these are huge figures. So that one content piece, we called it the penalty challenge. That's among the top 3 ever we kind of did. And of course, it is a big surprise once in a while what will happen, but this topic was kind of, yeah, we were, the colleagues that kind of fine-tuned it and came up with the idea, really were sure that this will be a success, and included existing players, former players, and fans, and it seemed to be like a good triangle with that. But one figure, maybe not an absolute figure, but in terms of giving a relation. So we won the Champions League a few weeks ago, and that Champions League final weekend had, of course, a massive following on our club media channels. Our digital tour didn't have as many, but had about 2/3 as many as the Champions League final weekend, which means, of course, final weekend is a weekend. Our tour was a 9-day, so I don't want to fake anything, but still, as you can imagine, a yeah, Champions League winning weekend is gaining quite some traction, and that's why, of course, the figures that we achieved, yeah, were really good. And of course, we want to have a normal tour again, and we want to activate as physical as possible, additional to what we do anyways on digital. But for this summer, for these circumstances, yeah, we're happy that yeah, we could interact with, yeah, the world's biggest sports family.
I'm very tempted to ask you to tell me which one was the better platform, Ronan's or Theo's, but we won't do that now. That would be embarrassing. Sebastián, if I can ask, so your role in this world is the technology supplier behind, and actually, you know, both the other platforms do elements of this. But tell me, you're thinking about. I'm thinking, you know, the scale that Bayern has and the other clubs have. You get interaction on the social platforms at immense, like almost unmanageable levels. And yet I know that you're developing technology to be able to facilitate that, so that football clubs, football organizations will be able to is the right word manipulate, understand, use the content? I mean, what's going on there?
Yeah, well, let me take this from different angles. The first one is really understand what the fans are expecting, looking for, and in partnership with our colleagues from social platforms, we are able through APIs to gather what are the likes, interests, and be able to personalize the content, personalize campaigns, and better monetize for sponsors, for commercial partners, those type of interactions. So it's important to put in place data platforms or digital platforms that are able to connect with first-party channels, apps, websites, online store, and so on, and third-party channels like Twitter or Facebook or Instagram and many others. So that is an important aspect. The second angle I would say is how you make the fans participate and at the same time be able to scale. When you have literally millions of fans participating, you need some sort of moderation, right? So, and not only moderation, but also, you want to make sure that no one is abusing or using, improper terms and so on. So for that, we put in place for media companies, AI, artificial intelligence technologies, one being called Azure Content Moderator, which checks all the text, images, and video content in order to avoid any potential offensive or undesirable content. So these are some tools. Then additionally, we have AI technologies like Azure Personalizer. So every, from the data that we're able to gather from multiple data sources with the proper consent of the users, be able to hyper target and make sure that you measure what is the ROI of those campaigns and measure which is the best channel. Sometimes could be one social network on another one, or email marketing, or push notifications, and you want to make sure that technology is enabling that. And finally, from a fan engagement standpoint, you want to make sure that the fans are part of the action, right? And that's why with technology and given COVID, I've seen a number of creative ideas in the market. Andreas was sharing some of the things that they are doing. But in Germany, I've seen the very first ones in a second division club where they were putting cardboard pictures of the fans in the stand. So as a way to bring the fans closer, but very, very static back then. We saw many more different approaches. For example, La Liga used an overlay, of fans' avatars on top of the raw signal, broadcasting signal. So they were able to display on the back of the screen and the stands full of fans, and probably literally, not only the fans but also the sound. So when someone was scoring, you can hear, and because of the partnership they have with Electronic Arts, the FIFA game, they were putting audio, so you can hear the fans cheering and shouting and so on. So that's, I think, very, very smart, because instead of putting, displays of technology. And the last one that I want to share, Richard, is the NBA case. In the NBA, we're able to bring, literally hundreds of fans into the stadium in a very interactive way using Teams, a similar tool that we're using right now in a together mode. So you make sure that the fans are part of the game, that are part of the action. And I think the big opportunity lies on not only bringing fans into the stadium and try to make this feel that is a full stadium, but also the opportunity to broadcast through OTTs, video streaming platforms, and so on, outside the stadium, not for 1,000 or tens of thousands, but for millions. And this is happening to the point that we're enabling OTT video streaming platforms and bringing in partners that are able to enrich those signals and placing video conference calls, as we are doing right now, so the fans can interact and you can be, talking to your friends in the UK or my family in Argentina, watching a match.
Great, thanks, Seb. And I'm really conscious of time. It seems to go very quickly when you're doing this online. Ronan, you've of course got there's that Bayern presence is on Facebook, as are many other teams. You've been doing quite a lot over the summer, I think, to support the teams. Is that right? Or have you? And you've also got some technology developments coming through, I think, as well.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Yeah, look, there's been a whole host of stuff that's happened over the summer, and like I'd say, Bayern have been very much at the forefront. I think when return to football happened and everyone realised that fans wouldn't be in stadiums, there's some of the stuff that Sebastián said is like bringing people into the stadium, and there's some of making fans feel like they're part of the club experience. So I think Bayern, lots of other clubs, Man United, Chelsea, loads of the big European clubs just sourced content from, for example, from Instagram and Facebook stories, simple hashtag United at home, for example, and pulled some of that stuff into their kind of own stories that they shared on a daily basis. Sounds super simple. It is super simple, but very powerful because fans have to feel close to the experience to really feel engaged. And that kind of translates through to the kind of more sophisticated end of the spectrum. And Bayern did a great job when they won the Champions League, as I think Andreas, very in a very kind of calm way said so. They created a filter for their Instagram platform, a camera effect where you could see all three kind of trophies that they'd won actually present within your own Instagram story that you're creating. So, it's a way to give fans tools to make things a lot more creative, and something that, we've seen lots of us dip into on everything from kit launchers and right the way through to unique fan experiences. And I think that, look, things like that are a great way to source content in from fans. But one way that we've seen that really elicits amazing content from fans is when you actually create brilliant content too. And there's just a couple of examples from just the last week that I'd like to call out. One is from Arsenal. It was the contract re-signing of Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. Such a huge moment for Arsenal fans. They kind of knew it was coming, but until it was signed, it was never a done deal. So he, after some preparation and a lot of work between us and them, he went live on Instagram with the Arsenal club account to actually tell fans that he was re-signing, that he was doing it there and then. And it created like an amazing response, not just the other players jumping in, but all the kind of fan reactions and all the kind of memes that created on the back of that. So that's a huge way to go about doing these things, that if you can spark the emotion with your fans, what will they go on to create afterwards that you can subsequently tap into? And not to leave out their North London rivals, Tottenham Hotspur, they also had a pretty big moment with Gareth Bale joined them. So we saw everything from Instagram Reels, which is a new product that launched over the summer for short form video format content, right the way through to a new product called Instagram Guides, which allowed them to kind of segment all of the different Bale is back content. Again, just creating that stuff that makes fans feel this is an amazing moment. I can riff off this, I can go and build off this and create my own amazing content. So just a little bit of a few examples, but many more great stuff we've seen over the summer.
Thank you. Yeah, and forgive me, Theo, but coming to you last in the four, you agree with all of that, though, right?
Much of it, yes. I mean, the most compelling content is clearly that involves fans, that backs issues, that personalizes the experience, and we have tools, as Facebook does, to solicit that. But I think there's something inbuilt into the title of this talk, which is that in order to, if you manage to connect with those fans, it immediately leads to gushes of money coming your way. And I'm not sure it necessarily does. I would argue, in fact, that taking a contrarian position, that the most obvious gold mine is the content that the clubs already sit on, which is their deep archive and their access to players. And that there is an opportunity, particularly when you think about what sponsors want, in order to be able to go and work through their rights deals, but to produce more compelling content that way. Now, if they can do that in a way that also connects with fans, like the Arsenal example just mentioned, then that's a very good idea. But the notion that a club can be a lightning rod for all club content and that will drive significant advertising revenue, I'm not sure is true. I mean, UGC is a sea of content. The networks are extremely good at trawling that sea and monetizing it with their efficient ad networks. But what that does is distribute millions of dollars of revenue to millions of people. And that's not necessarily the most conducive way to drive significant revenue for a club, which, if you're Bayern Munich, the sums of money and the effort you'd have to go to do that, they don't stack up just yet.
Andy and Bayern, you've got the scale, and therefore you must be generating the kinds of numbers on YouTube, on the other platforms. Are you seeing this as a significant revenue driver? And also, I guess, when you describe it as a family, does it feel slightly like you're, making money out of your family, or is that not the point?
So in general, we and especially our club media colleagues, which are the experts, they are very strict in terms of what kind of content is really allowed to be on our platforms, and how is it really bringing added value to the social media followership, and not only in that sense only to a commercial partner. So Bayern, I think, is really trying and very successful in trying to have a good balance to have pieces which are commercial pieces, but have it content-wise and also visual-wise, that it is really attractive and of added value, and that's important. And yes, I mean, especially in these times, but also in general, many Bayern partners in our corporate partnerships department are, of course, activating also on the club media channels. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Sebastián, you've been around this game for a little while. Do you feel that it's a revenue generating, the investment in the technologies that you're making, and also that clubs would need to make in order to deliver the value? As Theo says, I mean, maybe that investment is just too much to sort of stack up. Maybe they just should stick to the knitting almost.
Well, I think, the sports industry is becoming a sportainment and datainment industry. So, if that's a starting point. So technology today, I think it's an enabler, but more than enabler is a competitive advantage. And, every company in the coming years is going to become a software company or an AI company. And when you're dealing with scale, you need to make sure that you put in place the proper platforms. Fair to say is that probably 4 to 5 years ago, when we had this type of panels, situation was different, and we were building, custom, platforms. But more and more, the engineering teams are developing, very, very affordable solutions that a team can spend literally a few cents per year per fan, and that has an ROI on itself. But certainly, any investment, IT investment, should be backed up by a business case. And we are seeing that if you want to add more value to the sponsors, more value to broadcasters, and have a closer engagement with them, more value to your commercial partners, and a digital ecosystem that you can build, and new revenue streams that you can build out of a digital platform, and a single identity, and so on. Those are, I think, a recipe for success. But you need to build the business case, and again, more and more the investments are smaller and much more affordable, not only for the top 100 clubs, but probably for the 1,000 clubs to use today AI and technology.
Yeah, I can see that certainly when we're working with clubs or federations, there are very few, unfortunately, still, who have the full business case, who have the average revenue per user, the calculation of the ROI, and really kind of broken it down into that value so that you can make that case, as you say, for the investment in the product. It's still a lot, frankly, I think, working on, hey, it's just, let's get the fans involved in engagement without any sense of where that value is. Theo, I guess your point there being the fan engagement is not worth the effort, or just that the value is so much more if you focus on your core?
Clearly, you have to go to where the fans are. And so investment in a Facebook strategy, a Twitter strategy, a Snap strategy is a good idea. But I think the difference is the notion that UGC fills the content hole, and that fan content or content created by fans is compelling in itself to justify an investment in its acquisition and then distribution with sponsors. And I think the initial steps that everybody should, in my view, should be taking is that they should be experimenting on the digital platforms. COVID was a chance for many of them to do so. We were kind of a sandpit for new ideas, and we saw some terrific innovation happening. But I kind of question the notion that that clubs have the capacity to pick up all of the UGC that any successful club generates from their fans, and that they can then turn that into dollars and cents, and that there are easier opportunities by reviewing their existing rights deals and looking at the opportunity to expand onto other platforms. And we've seen that success when we've worked with a variety of clubs who've repurposed the professional content they make that is much more attuned with what many sponsors are actually looking for.
Ronan, if I may get an answer from you in just 5 seconds, because they're giving me the flashing light.
No, look, I think there's a lot of scope for everything that what Theo said. I think, look, 2 things I'd finish on, like branded content and making sure you involve your partners in this where possible, especially when there's a good fan story to tell. And then also not forgetting the ability to retarget. So if you do build up that fan base, you can actually justify the ROI based upon kind of a lower spend to acquire that customer, whether it's into your CRM database or for an app acquisition, for example.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much to all the members of the panel. I can hear the rounds of applause out there in the Ethernet. And while we're doing it, by the way, obviously, I'm wearing the Bayern Munich tie. I mean, clearly. Thank you so much, everybody, and we will see you online.